Good afternoon, everybody. It could be good morning. Who knows? This is Jamie Hancock. Thank you to Marcus LaRobardiere, my old client, Sid, for joining us. He's now laughing at the way I pronounce his surname. So, Marcus, we've known each other for a long time,
Yeah,
worked together for a long time, and we worked together when you were at News Store. You hired us to help you expand internationally, and we had a lot of fun.
yeah.
Fired us. Fired us. Just want to get that out there. You
Some
fired us
somehow I knew that was going to come up.
and rehired us again.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
So the conversation that we're going to have today, same rules as always, kind of three questions really. The first question is about content and experience marketing in the technology sector. We've both seen, played, failed, succeeded with, the kind of standard ABM cadence plays of you'd almost call it annoying at scale, I suppose, to a degree. I feel like there's a glimmer of hope coming out in the market generally of people trying more creative things. I saw Contentful doing some bake-offs around Europe
Yeah.
recently, which is kind of interesting experience. I've seen people trying different things. Um, I know you've got a take on it, and News Store's got a reputation for having done things that were very different than the market wanted. So, yeah, talk to me. Give us your take.
So I think, I mean, I love the idea of like the bake-offs. I'm a huge like British Bake-Off fan. So as soon as you said it, I'm like, of course, yeah. And every marketer should try and like, that contextual relevance. Whether people latch on to like the Stranger Things launch that's coming up. We're talking in November. It's going to be in January when this comes out, I think. But you know, I think you have to try things, and there are certain foundational pieces to any go-to-market or marketing program, especially if you're going to launch different ABM pieces. That I think is just get your foot in the door. You need something to build from. Um, I don't believe that that is how you're going to move mountains. It's certainly going to help drive pipeline. It's going to get your name out there, but to make a big splash, you have to throw a big rock. And there are certain plays that, of course, you're going to run. And I kind of liken those to these are just going to be everyday motions. These are constants. Now, we could debate, and that's a whole different discussion on how much you're going to automate and how much you're going to let AI do that. And I don't think we want to touch that because I think people to people is how you sell and how business is done. And so, how are you going to meet those buyers where they are? Are they going to recognize you as a name? As Jamie, you're selling, ABM and event services, or is it buying time that's sending us a bunch of emails? And the answer is it should probably be both. I don't think you can establish yourself in a competitive landscape doing vanilla tactics and slap a name on it like ABM, which, by the way, it's just marketing at the end of the day in a lot of ways if you know what you're doing and how to do it. But what you need to be able to do is differentiate. And you can't do that running playbooks from old HubSpot blogs and reading old Serious Decisions blogs and watching webinars from their ABM leaders and just applying that to what you're doing. You have to differentiate in some way and use your brain. We're marketers. You have to be creative. You have to think. A zig when others zag. And the problem is there's a lot of lazy marketers out there.
Yes, look, and again, we talked about this a lot in the past, but I talk about it to potential customers all the time. I've just did an interview, one of these with Helena from Dr. Martens, who said to me, "Don't send me emails because everybody, I get 5,000 emails and they're all
Yeah.
crap and they're always about you, and some of them are lazy and some are poorly spelt, but I just don't read them." And Craig from Liberty, I think, said RTS last year he got 380 invitations for coffee before RTS last year. You're just annoying the
That's
people you're trying to sell to, right? It's
yeah.
not okay.
No, no, it's not. And, as marketers, it's difficult to, okay, how can we do something different that still aligns with what the brand's trying to do, that is going to keep the sales team happy and produce for them? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're there to do. You're supposed to get the sales team at bats to try and win business. And there should be a good relationship between sales and marketing. Hey, we think this is going to work. And there needs to be trust across those teams. All right, marketing is going to try this, user conference, community building thing. And we need to put our weight behind it because we believe that they're behind it 100%. They believe it's going to work. And, if you start taking cues the other way and saying, hey, we just got to slam 500 emails out to, this guy to grab a coffee at RTS. Well, guess what? There's 490 other people that are trying to do the same thing. How do you differentiate? You can't stand out that way.
So talk to me about Endless Aisle then. So for those of you who don't know, New Store, where Marcus has been VP of Marketing for a long time, New Store had a podcast called Endless Aisle
Yeah.
that was in motion for what, 3 or 4 years at least before it turned into an event.
Yeah. So, again, going back to like, how do we differentiate? How do we pivot and stay agile? Endless Aisle was really born out of COVID. COVID came around. You're not doing in-person events. And that really shifted the way that everybody does business in terms of trade shows and industry confidence. I think we're on the decline anyway. And people were doing executive dinners, but once you clean the slate, how are you going to stand out and what are you going to do? And we know what happened to a lot of those competitors in our space and other businesses across B2B all the way around. There was massive layoffs. You couldn't do this, you couldn't do that because nobody was anticipating growth. So if you can maintain your team size, which we were able to do to a degree, how are we going to reach buyers? And the way that we were sort of looking at it was there are going to be brands that we were selling to. We were selling to retail and apparel brands. There are going to be brands with healthy balance sheets that are going to come out of this at some point, if we could get out of it. And there was light at the end of the tunnel, thank God. But so we leaned heavily into content, digital experiences, digital events. And one of the narratives was physical retail is going to be dead. Everybody's heard that many times, right? E-commerce is taking over. Stores are going to close. They're going to be made redundant. Just never happened. So started on the premise of let's have just conversations like this one with people in the industry, change makers, if you will, that are doing interesting things either on the brand or vendor side or influencers in the market to talk about the positive aspects of retail and the industry. How are you staying afloat? What are you doing differently? Getting your name out there, starting to talk about the problems and challenges that anybody was facing in the space. That grew and grew and grew. You had linked me up with Ian Scott, who became the co-host, and we did some really great interviews around NRF that sort of jump-started. That was the starting point for, okay, this is now starting to gain some momentum and some steam here. We had a large audience. There was a lot of engagement. People were coming up to our booth or at NRF or Shop Talk or other shows and saying, oh, I love the podcast. They're like, I didn't even know how many people were listening to this. And so, as you do, you say, okay, we're going to double down on what's working. And at the time, we had this really great sort of momentum and growth of customers that loved our product, partners that wanted to help in any way. And we said, okay, how do we maximize this and take it a level above? And so the idea was very simple. Let's bring this to a live audience. And, in partnering with you and the team, we were able to come up with something that we felt was going to serve the industry that we were trying to sell into without selling to them. And I think that was kind of the secret sauce. And so we brought panels, keynote speakers, speaking on topics, not about how great is New Store and, could you do omnichannel without us? The reality is, yeah, anybody can do omnichannel. There's dozens of vendors out there that can do these things. So that's not what people want to be told or heard at a show, that they're spending half a day or a full day the way that we baked it out to listen to that stuff. So let's bring the experts and leaders on that are using New Store, that are using our competitors that we don't even know what they're using, but they have something interesting to say. They have a point of view. Let's have those discussions, raw, authentic. These aren't canned, questions and answers. We want authenticity. People want to hear from people. There was buyers in the room that are taking notes from buyers that were, or brands that were on stage talking about how they did X, Y, and Z. That is what you wanted. And by the way, the entire vehicle for this was the partnership between us and Buying Time and bringing this to the audience. And then we got to do store tours. And then as the day went on, it increasingly became a much more intimate one-to-one piece. If you joined the store tours, you got to see stuff in action. If you did the dinner, you got to talk one-on-one. And, people walked away fulfilled. They said, this is not like industry trade shows. This is the heartbeat of retail. This is where it's happening. And, I think I told you I don't think I slept one wink the night before because I knew we had a great show, we had great content, it was a great day. The piece that I believed in but wasn't sure was going to land is would the people in the audience get it? Would they get that they're not being sold to? Would they get that this is for them, not for us? I mean, it was and it is, but the intent was how can we add value to this industry and to the brands that are in the audience that we ultimately want to be working with. But if you have a quarter by quarter point of view and you're trying to pepper in your perfect messaging and your sales pitch on these things, who the hell is going to buy that shit? Nobody. So you're putting a down payment on something that's going to come around if you do all those other foundational things following up the correct way, which is what those are there for, in my opinion.
And it's interesting, isn't it? I suppose there's two things that I'd layer onto that. One, this is just standard challenger marketing. If you've read the challenger marketing books,
Yeah.
they say own, don't sponsor. That's what a challenger marketing textbook will tell you. Own your own thing. Do not sponsor other people's. I'm still amazed anybody sponsored Commerce Futures because everybody, when we started, was a challenger brand. So it's almost like they
Yeah.
hadn't read the book. I didn't understand why they were doing it. Now it feels like everybody wants to deliver their own NSR Live or version of. So the first thing I would say is it gained a huge amount, created a lot of FOMO in the market amongst your competitors, which is a nice side benefit, I suppose, in a way to this, because there is a sort of brand share of voice thing about momentum between vendors in what is a very competitive market, which is interesting, right? You do it well
Yep.
and your competitors hate you, which is always fun,
Yeah.
or are jealous, are jealous because, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. They
And
might
then
hate
the
it.
other thing,
Oh, try, go for it. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. No, I mean, they all try to hire us to do it as well afterwards. The other thing I would say that was interesting, probably, and again, we've talked about this before, is that nobody left. So we
No.
were running these things. I think we've run five now. We've run them, and let's say we got 120 people, 130 people. They're almost all there at dinner at 10 o'clock at night. Just this is a 15-hour day. Well,
Yeah.
you've come to something that's 15 hours long. So I don't know whether none of us knew whether the format would, on its own, because it's a long day, be that compelling. But the format is almost as accidental. You'll tell me it wasn't accidental, but the experience of being there, maybe nobody wanted to leave. They're having a good time. There was enough variety in the, what's next? Who am I going to speak to next? There's something there, isn't there, about the format that makes you think
Yeah.
people want to
Yeah.
stick around.
The way that we had built it out was, and I believed, we had three parts, right? You have the morning conference, you've got the store tours, and then the dinner for people that, speakers are going to be there, and then anybody that qualified and people that you wanted there would be able to join. And I really thought that it was going to be kind of an a la carte, especially in New York where people are busy and they're doing X, Y, and Z, and nobody shows up at 9 a.m. I thought, hey, people are going to get to pick and choose what they want to join and do. That was a really, really small subsection of the audience. I mean, the
Yeah,
majority of people that would sit in on the dinner were there for the full boat the entire
yeah,
day. You had some people that would drop, some people that would join the store tours, or they'd run back to the office, or in our friend James Reed's case, maybe go to the Fender store and play a little guitar, and then come back and or Gibson, whatever,
yeah,
Gibson Garage,
yeah.
and they skip out for a part, and then they come back to the dinner. So the retention rate was very, very high. And I think it was a testament to the content and people feeling like they weren't being sold to, and this wasn't an advertorial for a new store that's led by sales to just make the number for the end of the year. We were trying to add value back, and make sure that people felt like they were learning something, gaining something. There was an aha moment that I had in Toronto, a year before we did the first Endless Aisle in London. We had worked with Adyen. There was an event that we had at the Apple offices, and we invited a bunch of retailers there. Did a light sort of panel discussion, hanging out in the Apple offices, which was really cool. And then we went to a nice dinner, and everybody was hanging out. And what we ended up doing is I realized at the end, we've got a future marketer and sales guy in the room. But I don't know if anybody heard my son yelling, but he was trying to sell me something. You got to understand your buyer.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But
Yeah, yeah.
what I ended up sort of realizing as you were looking around the room is everybody in attendance was more interested in talking to the people that were next to them and learning from others and sharing those experiences and understanding how do you do X, Y, and Z? How are you guys doing this at Canada Goose? We're trying to crack this and we can't figure it out. And so what we intentionally did was make sure that the content for the conference and the store tours, you're pairing people up and making sure that their focus and attention is on that peer-to-peer connection and network, while you're also adding value through the panel discussions and showing them
Mm.
these incredible innovative stores, which are led by Jack and Ian, who are amazing guys and do an incredible job. That was the core of it, but you have to create that space for people to learn from one another and connect. And that was I think that was part of the secret sauce, in addition to how great the content ended up being and what you could produce for panels and speakers. And so why would you want to leave that? You're having a great time and you're getting stuff and you're being inspired. It wasn't it took a bit and I didn't want to believe it. You're trying to look at it from like a skeptical lens and like, oh, maybe we're just getting lucky. But then you do it again and again, and then you do it in Australia twice and you're like, no, this is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
This works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to us about, again, I think we met when you were I think we met when you had one sales guy in the UK and you were
Yeah.
really kind of taking international marketing seriously for the first time.
Yep.
So let's not bore each other with what we did because, otherwise it will sound like we love each other a huge amount. But I suppose
We do,
talk to
but
me
that's
about, yeah, yeah, okay. Talk to me about talk to me about what you wouldn't do again. So what were the mistakes you made in the way, I think there's lots of things that were done well, but what did what were the mistakes that were made in kind of the way that you went into Europe and what would you do differently if you had that choice again? We tried to do ABM together, right? That was
yeah.
basically what we did.
Yeah, and it was successful. Um, I think I think when you're expanding to new markets, and we made, we were kind of advantageous if there were brands that were willing to work with us, and there were things around fiscalization and things that were coming, and it was on the pipeline, and so it was like now is the moment that we can really make the step in. I wouldn't do anything differently. And I think if anything, what I would have wanted to do, or if I was to do it again, would have been to really lean on partners prior to us making that investment. Um, because I think the risk is you step into a new market, and if it's a competitive one, all of a sudden it becomes part of the noise. Where can we find some easy segues in, via partners or other influencers, or the way that Anthony sold is I have connections here and here, and we started to slowly do that, but we did it all at the same time.
Yeah,
If we had paused and started to do some foundational pieces or test with events like we did, our focus was in the UK, but we tested in Italy, we tested in France, we tested in Germany. You learn quickly that the nuance and cultural differences there, it doesn't necessarily work. And so the US and the UK were very similar in the sense that English is the native language, and there's enough overlap. You've got a lot of expatriates in the UK. You've got UK folks in the US. So there were enough similarities where we could run very similar playbooks and do things virtually the same way without understanding that, hey, you can't invite, a German executive to a match in Bayern Munich because, that's gifting and that's bribery and there's laws against that. And like,
yeah,
and then you have to speak in the German language and you can't work from influencers up to decision makers. You got to make those decisions and those invites have to be at the executive level. So we didn't face those challenges in the UK, but I think for anybody that's looking to emerge into a new market, um, I think you do have to plan, but you need to sort of ease into it. And I wouldn't change our approach, our tactics, our strategy in any sense of the way, because we were successful. We did grow business, and brands did come around. But I think warming it up,
yeah,
via partners that already have that install base would be the only thing that I may have changed, and maybe the timing piece of it. But
yeah.
once it did start to warm up, we became very successful, through the program.
It was interesting. As you say that, I mean, not many people have done a good job of coming into the UK in over the last couple of years. I mean, I think you guys did a good job, as you say. It was, it was well executed. I think Centra did a good job of arriving in the UK. They did it that way, right? I think they did it probably because they didn't have much money, but they came in partner first, kind of
Yeah.
creative first, very much below the radar. I think they did a really good job of building like a tribal feel to the way that they arrived. It was good marketing that kind of really helped them arrive in a quite a cool way, which is
Yeah.
very unusual for tech, as we both know, right? I mean, who does that? Mostly, it's just my hammer's bigger than your hammer.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
hammer do you want to be? Which hammer do you want to be hit with? Oh, this massive hammer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's
Um,
crazy how many brands and businesses and leadership groups think that's the way to do it. Good luck.
oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, look, the number of people that I've spoken to. I spoke to a German vendor, e-commerce vendor, a couple of years ago, and they said, look, our parent is a £6 billion e-commerce brand in its own right. The leader of the founder of that business, he should come and speak at your events. Like, nobody knows who he is. Nobody
Yeah.
knows. Nobody in the UK knows who that brand is.
Doesn't
Nobody
get, it
knows.
doesn't matter.
Right?
No one gives a
That,
shit.
you think that's a big hammer, but it's not. It's not even in the toolbox, right? It's nobody gives a fuck. Um,
No.
so yeah, those are interesting, I think. And now, um, and then talk to me about our final subject, which is kind of, I suppose, the rocket ship, right? So um, you were at News for a long time. Um,
Yeah.
there's a rocket ship. There's a moment where everybody thinks they're staying on this thing because the rocket's going to deliver a chunk of change, or there's going to be an exit. There's going to be a moment. I know so many people who've stayed too long, not stayed long enough, got their moment right, got it wrong. It's a very
Yeah.
complicated set of decisions, right? And you've left news stores. So tell me about, not necessarily just news stores specifically, and we can obfuscate it, but talk to me about the thinking behind staying or not staying.
Yeah. I mean, I- everybody wants a successful exit, but they're not happening that much anymore.
No.
It's the landscape has changed. I joined in 2017, and that was on the heels of Stefan selling demandware to Salesforce, and we had one customer, and everybody thought we're going public in 3 years. Well, the math wasn't mathing. How the hell is that going to work? So I'll speak from my experience. It was okay. You're part of a build. You're trying to get this to a spot where that may happen, and slowly but surely the customers start coming in. You start to build a big portfolio. You expand to new markets. Okay, this is happening, and then there's a global pandemic. There's wars popping off in different parts of the world. Supply chain shuts down. All these things that you didn't factor into any of the strategic planning. The board couldn't foresee it happening because nobody could. So then you have to adapt and pivot. And then how do you build things up, and how do you think outside the box to get to where you want to go? And that's where some of our creative ideas came from in terms of endless aisle and other things that we were testing and doing. But at a certain point, you're sitting around and thinking, okay, the growth is steady. We're still growing year over year. Um, but from my own perspective, it's what are those new things here? And only speaking from my own perspective, it's like I understand where we're trying to go with the business, but from a personal development standpoint, what are the new things I can do? You can add a new flavor here. We can go launch in LaSalle, and in Australia we tested it. Okay, you know, maybe if we get the approvals and the budget comes in, let's do in LaSalle live down there, and we'll see. So you kind of from a personal standpoint, okay, I've run these plays, we've done this, we've done that. I'm looking around thinking everything that I wanted to do as a marketer to get to where I wanted to be, at that like VP level, understanding where I personally want to go. You want to be a CMO in 5 to 7 years. Okay, can I do that here? That's one question. Is there more things that I want to do to try and grow this business that actually works with my own kind of personal interests, but also is this going to help fuel and grow the business? And sort of looking around and saying, well, I don't know that there's other things we could do for sure. We could do, banners and billboard displays and things like that. Is that really going to move the needle? Probably not. You're more likely to, geolocate ads from Ubers around NRF. There's a free tip for anybody listening.
Yeah.
And it's that way. So while everybody's heading to NRF, you can take a look and, oh, this is presented to you by blah, blah, blah. Probably in that vein is probably the most creative you're going to get there. And so can I do the things that I, as a marketer, want to be able to do as I look back on a career and say, I got to do some pretty cool shit. And it helped the business. It wasn't just vanity and it wasn't just pride saying, this is what we want to do to build a resume. It was, does this actually impact the business? And, you also start thinking, are there other businesses and other things that I want to be able to do that just because of what we're selling and how and our buyers behave and things like that, it might not work here. And do I want to try and challenge myself and test that in other spots? So you balance like, okay, there's high potential from, an equity and exit standpoint, but there's also the reality of, okay, maybe I need to push myself and try different things. And so it's kind of a balance between where we are, where's the company going versus are there other opportunities and challenges that I want to take? And that sort of led to it. I think for anybody in that spot, do you see yourself growing and continuing to develop and becoming the professional that you want? Or have you kind of maxed out and you're limited based on the circumstances of where you are?
And therefore don't overstay your welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. if you're even welcome.
If you're evil, right? And I was never welcome. Right. So on that subject, we are up for time. Fascinating discussion. As always, a fantastic guy to work with, and I'm very grateful for our time together. And that was really interesting, right? I think technology and marketing technology is fucking lazy, and you're one of the few people I've ever worked with who didn't make it lazy, right? You always wanted to do different stuff, and I'm truly grateful.
Me
So,
too. Me too.
thanks, man. I will talk to you on the other side. Have a great weekend, and I'm looking forward to meeting the salesman in the room at another point in time.
Sounds good, man. Too.